Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom Podcast. This is Justin. You have found another Strength, Yoga, and Freedom Rewind episode. Now, this episode I love because we are now into the month of July, and we're talking about relationships, stuff that goes on with other people, and sometimes dealing with hard things that we have to do in relationships to keep moving towards our purpose. And this episode originally aired back in January, actually January 5th of this year, called How to Accept Who Is in Your Life Right Now. And I teach you the 3 things that you can look for in another person with regards to how they support you. I'm going to teach those to you today because who is in your life right now and in what capacity they are in is very important to becoming a happier person. So sit tight. Enjoy this rewind episode. See you in there. Here we are again, everyone. Happy Thursday or happy whatever day you're listening to this podcast. I guarantee you it's a day that ends in a Y, right? But no matter when you're listening to this, I'm just glad that you're here because today's episode, you may not like what you hear in today's episode. And I have to tell you that I don't always like delivering episodes like this, especially when it comes to other people, because I firmly believe that the message and the teachings that I put out there to all of you they go kind of against the norm of how things are flowing in society. And I am someone who really prides myself on putting out this content, which is not always easy to hear, but I pride myself on the content because what it does is it drives people to make changes to become the happiest versions of themselves. Whether that's difficult for you to hear or not, that's up to you to decide. It has been a difficult journey for me to hear and learn all of these things too. And now I share them with you from my place of happiness. So that's why we're here. And in the last episode, on Tuesday's episode, or just the last one, if you're just scrolling through the episodes, we talked about how to accept more and how to let go more in your life. We talked about Ishvara Pradihana, which is all about letting go. And it's all about acceptance and how to accept the current stage of your life that you're in. And there were some tools in there that I gave you that were relevant to giving yourself more acceptance and allowing things to flow a little bit more in your life and being present. And one of the things that we talked about was a little preview into today's episode, and it talked a little bit about how other people might treat you or how you might treat others. So it's important to back up and listen to that episode before getting into this one. And in today's episode, I am going to reveal the 3 things that we should all be looking for in someone else when they're in our lives. If they want to be close, and we're talking about close relationships here. So we're talking about the people who are in your life in a close way, not people in your life who are just maybe an acquaintance or who you walk down the street and you pass. We're talking about people who are in your life and are an important part of your life. So this does not mean just your partner. This means your friends. It's people you work with, because believe it or not, the people you work with, they are important to your life in one way or another. And then of course, other family members, whatever the case may be, these are close relationships, people who you interact with on a very regular basis. It is also nonsense, complete nonsense. And this is where it's going to get hard to hear this for some of us. It is nonsense that thinking or believing that someone has to stay in your life who is abusive to you in any way, just because they might be blood related to you, or there may have been something in the past that drew you together, and now they are abusive to you, that's nonsense. So I really, really, really encourage you to seek professional help from your trusted professional, your doctor, whoever it is. Talk to them if you find that you need to get out of any type of an abusive relationship. So in this episode, we're not going to be talking about that kind of abuse, but we are going to be talking about some things that happen in relationships that may deter you from wanting to get a little closer to someone if we find that they don't have their own best interest at heart if they act like that, which in turn would be not having your own best interest either. So any kind of physical or verbal abuse that gets so hard to handle that you don't know where else to turn, it's always important to seek medical advice and professional. So let's get into these three things, and I want to say two things. Number one, it's not only important to notice these things in others, but it's also important, in fact, it's more important to notice these three things in yourself. This is critical. And then number two is it is very important to put up boundaries if you notice others are changing their behavior and they're not aligning with you anymore and doing things that make you feel uncomfortable. If the boundaries are crossed, you are being sent a clear message from the other person. Not only can boundaries teach you something if someone follows them, but they're teaching you something if they don't adhere to the boundaries. So remember, boundaries are not about them, they are about you. You set boundaries for you. So let's get right into this. Let's get into the three things that you could be looking for in another person that is a way of support for you. And at the end, I'm going to give you some advice on what to do if someone is maybe only doing one of these things or two of them or maybe none of them. All right, here's number one. They should be supporting you physically. Now, supporting someone physically means you're physically showing up for them. It doesn't mean you like physically, take their body and pick them up and carry, they're not carrying you somewhere. I mean, if you hurt yourself, of course, having someone pick you up and carry you is wonderful support. But that's not what I'm talking about overall here, right? Maybe that's called advice. Right? So what you're getting from me right now is physical support. You're listening to me speak. And maybe other people will speak to you and give you advice in your life. Physically talking to someone with their words, and I mean positive words, is a way that they could support you physically. I'm talking about positive words. Borrowing things physically, like lending tools to fix something or something to use maybe when you're cooking or an ingredient you need when you're cooking, or maybe an object that will help someone day to day, like maybe some clothes. You're supporting someone physically if they're having some trouble and you give them some clothes or something like that. Giving someone some water if they're thirsty, or, just sharing what you have, giving that physical gift to someone else. Of course, you can show physical support by doing a task for someone, especially at work, like completing something else someone is struggling to complete at work, or giving someone a ride to work. Or maybe if you notice someone is struggling to carry something that is heavy and you carry it for them, that's physical support too. And a lot of that has to do with people at work too. If you are not doing anything and you notice other people might need a little bit of help, then help them out. And finally, even physical support through all of those things we love as humans, like hand holding or hugs, kisses, allowing someone into your home physically who may need a hand, or who just wants to come over just to talk or be there with you in their presence, in your presence. That's all physically supporting. So those are all ways you can support someone physically. And we know there's a lot more than that, but those are just some general outlines for that. And then number two, supporting you emotionally. Emotional support means that someone is being extremely empathetic. To me, emotional support and empathy all go hand in hand. Here's what an empathetic person does, or someone who is very emotionally supportive. They acknowledge how someone else feels. They show gratitude for other people. They also show gratitude for someone opening up and sharing things like, thank you for sharing that with me. That's emotional support. Being supportive, like emotionally being supportive, means being happy for a win and not making it about your wins. So if you're supporting someone emotionally, if someone shares a win with you, you're not going to just say, oh, that's great, but what I did was blah, blah, blah. That's not supporting anyone emotionally. You're supporting someone emotionally when you are so happy for their win, you're almost as happy as they are. And maybe you accept the loss as much as they accept the loss, and you don't beat them up over it. Showing interest in someone else when they are speaking instead of changing the subject. That's important. Have you ever been around someone who, as soon as you tell a story, they immediately have to tell a story about themselves? I know someone who does that nonstop. You may know someone who does that nonstop, and it can be so exhausting because what that means is that person's not really listening to you. They're just waiting for their little gateway to get in there. And that they may not be doing that on purpose. That's just a habit they've created. You can encourage someone. And that doesn't mean just saying, oh, you can do it. Oh, go. Those are great things. But sometimes that little bit of oomph, like get off your ass and exercise, right? Have you done your exercise today? That accountability kind of stuff, accountability partners. That stuff's great for emotional support. What about restating or recapping what someone just stated to you so that they know you heard them? Or asking someone what they need. Like, do you want advice or do you just want me to listen? That's emotional support. And a lot of that can be physical support too, because all of this ties together. And number 3 is going to surprise you, I think, and we're going to talk about that right after the break. Hey there, everyone. Justin again. I hope you have enjoyed the first part of this episode. If you're looking for a really good, inexpensive journal to do some journaling daily in the morning, maybe it's part of your morning routine, part of your evening routine, check the link in the description of this episode, whether you're listening to this on YouTube or you're listening to it on your favorite podcast app or platform, because this journal that I found on Amazon, I've now purchased 4 of them. I go through them pretty quickly and I love it. So it's a great journal for any type of writing you want to do, and it's super inexpensive and it's so easy to carry around. So check that out, and let's jump back into the episode because I'm sure you're excited to hear what part 3 that I'm teaching you is all about. Let's go. Okay, we are back, and I think this third one could surprise you, unless maybe you heard me talk about this in a previous episode, because I did. Then it might be a little bit familiar to you. But this one can be a little tricky to talk about, so let's unpack it. And that is this: supporting you financially. There's some things that this does not mean. Okay, and the first thing that this does not mean is it does not mean that someone is giving you money or supporting you while you sit and watch TV all day or you clean the house as a trade-off for not going to work, right? That's not what this means. If someone is supporting you and you're not doing anything, then that's on them. They need to pull away from that nonsense because you're not giving anything back by not doing anything out of respect for that person. But it could mean that that other person supports your job as a means to make money, and they won't degrade your job or how you're doing your job or how you make a living. It also means that they'll assist you if you're starting something new, like a new business or maybe a side hustle, because they love you and they want you to succeed. That's supporting you financially. It doesn't mean that they have to give you $500,000 for your business. It means, hey, if you make a t-shirt, I'll wear the t-shirt around. That doesn't cost you anything. It means I'll share your posts on social media. That's supporting you financially. If you live with someone like a roommate or whoever, and they are taking food that's yours out of the refrigerator, they're not supporting you financially. They're just taking. They will not do things carelessly that will cost you money in the end with regards to your personal property. So if someone's destroying your personal property, they're not supporting you financially. What about at work? Let's talk a little bit more about people that can help you financially or support you financially at work. If your boss does not value you financially, it doesn't always mean that they won't give you a raise or more money. However, I will say, when you value yourself and you value your worth, you will be able to talk to your boss about the money that you think you should be making. So if your boss does not value you financially, you need to first take a look back at yourself. And then you need to understand that your boss may not always support you financially due to 1,000 different constraints when it comes to money. But what it could mean if they're not supporting you financially is it means that they're valuing other people instead of you. So those other people in turn will do a whole lot of less work, and they'll get the same or more money. Have you ever been in that situation where you've worked somewhere and you are doing such a good job, yet you are undervalued because the person you're working for is so caught up in the ego of everyone else that they're putting all that energy into them and you're over here just doing the best job you can, that can be a really difficult situation and one you might have to leave. I've had to leave jobs where that's happened to me. Maybe you have to. It also means that the boss, if they're not supporting you financially, it also means that they don't support your abilities or the gifts or the qualities that you bring to the organization because they're focused on someone else. And that makes your job harder. And all that does is it leaves you unfulfilled. So supporting you financially means someone else is constantly respecting your need to fund your own life and be a happy and healthy person with the amount of money you feel you need to have a good and consistent living for yourself. They will support that, whoever it is, at work or your friends or your partner or whoever it is. Now, these three ways are important to these three ways people can support you and how they can stay in your life. It's important to understand that you may need to make changes if you notice that someone in your life is only displaying one or two or none of them, and you notice there's some things that are missing. So the first thing that you can do if you notice some of these things are missing is, of course, as I mentioned before, you can seek professional advice, especially if this is a very long-term relationship or you're in a committed relationship or there's children involved. The second thing that you could do is you can start to shift your energy because it will make you a happier person. And studies and research show you that you probably have seen or heard this, and you can look this up, it's everywhere, that being around people who are happier people or who support you and who are empathetic and who, all those things, they help you to be more fulfilled in your life. That's well-known, established research that's out there. So you know that shifting your energy away from people who are not supporting you is going to help you, even though it feels like a shitty thing to do. And that's why the title of this episode is How to Accept Who is in Your Life. And it's important to understand that who is in your life at certain points in your life is going to change. People change, people grow. Letting go of the people who are not supporting you is probably one of the hardest things you could do in your life. And you may have been let go from someone who you may not have been supporting. And whether you have done this consciously or unconsciously, that could have happened too. But it is very important because in order to be a happier person, the people who surround you must support you. And when you shift your energy away from people, it's not that you hate them or you think that they're scum, but when you allow someone to stay in your life in a close personal way and then they rob you of support, not only are you dishonoring and disrespecting them for allowing that to continue and happen, but you're disrespecting yourself. And relationships, as we know, are not one-sided, and you are not in a flow when you're trying to force someone to meet your standards or if someone's forcing you to try to meet their standards, especially when these three things that I've just discussed, the financially, the physically, and the emotionally, especially when those three are your standards. Those are the three things I look for when I surround myself with close people in my life. If you don't meet if you don't meet all three of those things, you're not close to me in my life, because the lack of those things causes unhappiness, not just to me, but to everybody. It is very, very important to place people in your life where they can do the least harm. And I know that sounds very unloving, but the only way that anyone will change their behavior is if you are the master teacher teaching yourself love, not by trying to change someone else's behavior. People learn and they change on their own, but most of the time they do it because they're led by an example, not because they're being forced to do so. So you being a love for yourself and supporting yourself those three ways will teach others to behave that way. And if they don't, then that's on them and not on you. So just understand that if you are now, we're wrapping this episode up and you're thinking to yourself, oh dear Lord, I have this person and this person and that person. I know that this is a problem. I know that this is a problem. I want you to understand that I have been there. There have been a lot of people who used to be in my life in many stages of my life that are now not in my life, either at all or they're in limited capacity because the support is not there. And that is not because I think that they are, as I mentioned before, that they're scum or that they're horrible people. It's because the stage of their life that they're in is not aligning with the stage of the life that I am in. And again, we're talking about support here. We're not talking about the horrible physical abuse or the horrible mental abuse, where when that happens, someone has to completely go, because that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day that could go into a whole nother route. But I understand how difficult this could be, but I also understand how freeing it becomes when you start to move your energy into the people who are giving that reciprocal energy back with such a loving and supportive demeanor. It just makes your life so much better, and you become a happier person. And that's what we're all here for, to become happier people. And sometimes that takes removing people completely, or in removing the parts of them, or keeping them at a particular distance. Maybe you don't go out with them anymore. Maybe you only go to work with them and you do not hang out outside of work. I've had to do that with people too. You probably have too. Again, it's not supposed to be something where you're completely shutting them down and telling them they're terrible. You just change your behavior. The more people that do that, the more others will start to change too. It's a cyclical effect. It's a ripple effect. And that's why we're here in this community. So I wish you all a wonderful weekend and a wonderful rest of the day when you're listening to this. And then today, when you find that happiness, maybe it's with someone who's supporting you, smile, enjoy it, because you deserve it. We'll see you soon. Okay, one last thing. The content in the Strength, Yoga, and Freedom podcast is not intended as a replacement or a substitution for the advice of any medical professional, like a physician, a psychologist, or a qualified therapist, or any other medical professional. It is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only.